You know, there's this concept in business school, and honestly just in life, called survivorship bias.
Right.
We tend to focus exclusively on the winners. We look at the companies that made it to the Fortune 500 and, stayed there for 50 years. We study their habits, their CEOs, their morning
We
routines.
build a whole mythology around them.
Exactly. But if you really want to understand how the economy works, especially the brutal landscape of American retail, you shouldn't just be looking at the guy standing on the podium popping the champagne. You should be looking at the ones who got knocked down.
That is where the real lessons are hidden. The failures, the near misses, the bankruptcies, and ones that just refuse to stay dead.
Yeah.
It's the Darwinian underbelly of capitalism.
And that is exactly what we're doing today. We are looking at a brand that, by all rational accounts, should be a fossil. It's a name that might trigger a very specific potpourri-scented memory for you if you grew up in the South or the Midwest. We are talking about Stein Mart.
Stein Mart. It is a fascinating case study. I mean, if you were to look at a textbook life cycle of a retail brand, it usually goes birth, growth, maturity, decline, and finally, death.
Right. The end.
The end. Maybe you get a liquidation sale, maybe you get a nostalgic t-shirt sold on eBay, but that's it. The entity ceases to exist. Stein Mart, however, didn't get that memo.
No, they definitely didn't. We are looking at a story that starts on a steamboat in Mississippi in the early 1900s, rides the wave of the American mall explosion, crashes and burns during a global pandemic, gets bought by what can only be described as
E-commerce vultures.
exactly, e-commerce vultures, almost dies again. And now, here we are. It's February 2026, and according to the reports we have in front of us, Stein Mart is back.
Which is incredibly rare. We need to frame this correctly for you, the listener. This isn't just a story about a store selling discounted cardigans and crystal vases. This is a story about resilience. It's a 118-year roller coaster ride.
118 years.
And it forces us to grapple with this really modern economic concept of zombie brands. What makes a brand valuable enough to bring back from the dead not once, but twice?
That is the mission for this deep dive. We are going to unpack this entire saga. We have a stack of sources here: corporate history, bankruptcy filings from the 2020 crash, financial reports from the REV acquisition, and of course the recent news about their 2026 return. We're going to figure out how a Russian immigrant's general store became a symbol of upscale discount shopping, why the wheels fell off, and what this resurrection tells us about the future of how we shop.
We have a lot of ground to cover. It's a big story.
So let's map this out for everyone. We're going to start at the very beginning. Part 1, the origins. We're going back to 1908 to understand the DNA of the company.
You have to.
Then Part 2, the expansion. How do they actually make money? We need to get into the weeds of their business model because it was actually quite clever.
Very clever.
Part 3 is the experience, what it felt like to shop there, and why that mattered. Part 4 is the fall, the big one, the 2020 crash. And finally, Part 5, the afterlife, what is happening right now in 2026.
It's a perfect arc, from the Mississippi Delta to the digital cloud.
Let's jump into Part 1 then, the origins. Because honestly, if you pitch this script to a movie studio, they might tell you it's a little too cliche.
Oh, absolutely.
It's the classic American immigrant story.
It really is. It has a cinematic quality to it, for sure.
So set the scene for us. It's 1905. Our protagonist is Sam Stein. He's a Russian Jewish immigrant. He's in New York City, which is, the standard entry point.
The classic Ellis Island story.
Right. But he doesn't stay there.
No, and that's a key part of the history of the American South that often gets overlooked. There was a significant movement of Jewish immigrants who left the crowded tenements of the Lower East Side to find opportunity in the wider country. New York was it was saturated.
Too much competition.
Way too much. If you wanted to build something of your own, you often had to look elsewhere. Sam Stein was one of them. He heads south. And he doesn't arrive in a car or a train. He arrives in Greenville, Mississippi on a steamboat.
Just picture that for a second. 1905. A Russian immigrant stepping off a steamboat in the deep Mississippi Delta. That is a completely different world.
Oh, world away.
Culturally, linguistically, climatically, it's hot, it's humid, and it's very, very far from Russia or New York.
It would have been a massive shock,
Yeah.
but you have to look at the economic context. The South in the early 1900s was agricultural. It was rebuilding. There was a specific niche for what we call the merchant class.
Okay.
You had these immigrants starting as peddlers, carrying goods on their backs, literally walking from farm to farm, and eventually saving enough to open small general stores. They filled a gap in the local economy that the established plantation economy wasn't serving.
They were the connectors.
That's a perfect way to put it. They were the connectors.
And that's what Sam Stein did. He didn't start a fashion empire.
Yeah.
He started a general store in 1908.
Correct. This was Stein Mart in name, but not in the concept as we knew it later. It was a true general store. You have to imagine wooden floors, barrels of goods.
Like in the movies.
Exactly. You're selling tools, dry goods, maybe some fabric, seeds, perhaps some basic workwear. You are serving the local agricultural community. It's a volume business, low margin, high necessity. You are the lifeline for the local farmers.
So for decades, it's just this local staple in Greenville, a family business.
A successful one, successful enough to support a family, build a life. But then we hit the first major pivot point. And this is a theme we're going to see a lot in this story, a generational shifts changing the business model.
It's always the next generation that shakes things up.
Always. So it's 1932, Sam Stein passes away.
And his son, Jake Stein, takes the wheel. Now, I'm looking at the date here, 1932. That is, historically speaking, a terrible time to take over a retail business.
It's possibly the worst time in American history to take over a business. We are in the absolute depths of the Great Depression. Unemployment is skyrocketing. We're talking 25% unemployment in some areas. Banks are failing. Disposable income is practically non-existent.
But Jake Stein makes a move that defines the company for the next century. He pivots. He says, no more general merchandise.
A huge risk.
A huge risk. He shifts the focus entirely to discounted clothing. Why? Why double down on fashion when people can barely afford food?
It sounds counterintuitive, but it was actually brilliant. In the Depression, value wasn't just a marketing buzzword, it was a survival mechanism.
Use everything.
Everything. People still needed clothes for work, for church, for dignity, but the idea of paying full price at a fancy department store was impossible. By pivoting to a discount model, Jake Stein aligned the business with the brutal economic reality of his customers.
So he understood his customer psychology.
He understood that people didn't want to look poor just because the economy was poor.
He wasn't trying to sell them luxury. He was selling them respectability at a price they could stomach.
Exactly. And that created loyalty. Incredible, deep loyalty. It didn't just survive the Depression, it thrived because of it. It embedded the brand into the community.
So by the time we get to the 70s,
By the late 1970s, Stein Mart is basically the place to shop for families in the Mississippi Delta. If you needed a suit for Sunday service or a dress for a wedding, you went to Stein Mart.
so that brings us to the incubation period. For roughly 70 years, from 1908 to the late 70s, it's a regional success story. It established the DNA. But it wasn't a national giant yet.
No, it was a well-kept secret in Mississippi. Which brings us to the third generation.
Here we go again.
Enter J. Stein.
This is where the numbers start to get a little crazy. I'm looking at the expansion data here. In 1977, when J. Stein really takes the reins, they have 3 stores.
3.
3? That's a nice, successful family business. You can manage 3 stores by driving between them in a single afternoon.
Respectable, manageable. You know every employee's name.
But then, 1990. 13 years later, they have 40 stores.
A huge jump.
And by 1996, just 6 years after that, 123 stores. That is a rocket ship.
That is the definition of exponential growth. And it's incredibly dangerous if you don't do it right.
How so?
Going from 3 stores to over 100 implies a massive logistical overhaul. You can't run 123 stores the way you run 3. You need distribution centers, you need HR departments, you need standardized training, a whole corporate infrastructure.
So how do they manage that? How do you go from a Mississippi secret to a Sunbelt powerhouse without the wheels falling off?
You have to systematize the magic. J. Stein took that discount value concept his father created, but he polished it. He gave it a different sheen.
What do you mean?
He realized that the general store vibe wouldn't fly in Dallas or Jacksonville. He moved the headquarters to Jacksonville, Florida, which was a huge strategic move.
Why Jacksonville?
Logistics and access. Jacksonville is a port city. It's a gateway to the rest of the Southeast. It put them in a position to push into Florida, which was booming, and then move westward into Texas and eventually California. They went where the sun was shining and the suburbs were growing.
Okay, that makes sense. But they didn't just open stores anywhere. And this is where we need to get into part 2, the business strategy. Because Stein Mart had a very specific science of upscale discount.
It's a dangerous middle ground. In retail, usually you want to be the cheapest, think Walmart, or the best, think Nordstrom or Neiman Marcus.
The middle is the death zone.
It's the dead zone, absolutely. Being in the middle is usually where you get crushed. But Stein Mart carved out a niche right there in the center.
The sources mention their location strategy. They targeted cities with populations of 125,000 or more. That seems like a very specific number. Why 125,000?
That number is the Goldilocks zone. Think about it. If you go to a massive metropolis, say downtown Chicago or Manhattan, the real estate costs are astronomical.
Oh, forget about it.
You're paying hundreds of dollars per square foot in rent. Plus, you are competing directly with the flagship luxury stores that have unlimited budgets. You can't win there.
Okay, so stay away from Fifth Avenue.
Right. But if you go to small rural towns with 10,000 people, you don't have enough density of affluent customers to support the upscale part of the business. You can't sell designer dresses in a town where the median income is too low.
So 125,000 is the sweet spot. It's big enough, but not too big.
Exactly. 125,000 gives you a regional hub. It's big enough to have a country club, big enough to have a hospital system, and a university, which means doctors and professors and professionals.
People with disposable income.
People with disposable income and a reason to dress up. It's big enough to have a refined customer base, but affordable enough to operate a large footprint store without the rent killing you.
They relied heavily on demographic research, too. Income, education, occupation. They were hunting for a specific person.
Oh, absolutely. They were hunting for the aspirational shopper, or perhaps the pragmatic affluent shopper.
Define that for me. Pragmatic affluent.
This is someone who knows what a Ralph Lauren or a Calvin Klein label is. They appreciate the quality of the fabric, the cut, the stitching. They aren't looking for generic polyester.
They know quality.
They know quality. And they could probably afford to shop at Macy's or Dillard's or even Nordstrom. But they choose not to pay full price because they are smart with their money. They view overpaying as a personal failure.
The smart shopper, the person who buys a shirt and immediately tells you, guess how much I paid for this? It was marked down from $80 to $30.
Precisely. That is the Stein Mart customer. The dopamine hit isn't just the shirt, it's the savings. They offer 25 to 60% off department store prices. That is a compelling hook. It gamifies the shopping experience.
But here's the tricky part. To make that customer, the one who knows quality, comfortable, you can't have the store feel like a dump. I remember walking into some discount stores in the 90s, and it looked like a bomb had gone off in a pile of laundry.
Right. The treasure hunt can easily turn into dumpster diving if you aren't careful. And that alienates the affluent shopper. They want the deal, but they don't want the grime.
And that's where the upscale part of upscale discount comes in.
It had to. Stein Mart went the other way. They tried to make it feel like a boutique. They explicitly used terms like the boutique for their special occasion clothing and attitudes for everyday women's wear.
Those names matter.
They do. And look at the physical environment. They had carpeting. That sounds like a small detail, but it changes the acoustics of the store. It makes it quieter, calmer, softer. They had better lighting, warmer tones, not those harsh industrial fluorescent lights you see in warehouse stores that make everyone look green. They expanded into home decor in 2010 with housewares that were actually arranged nicely, not just piled on shelves.
It removes the shame, didn't it?
That's a great way to put it. In the 80s and 90s, there was still a bit of stigma attached to discount shopping. It implied you couldn't afford better by elevating the atmosphere, making it feel like a smaller, friendlier department store. They gave their customers permission to hunt for bargains without feeling like they were downgrading their experience. You could run into your neighbor at Stein Mart and not feel embarrassed.
Now, I want to touch on a specific detail about their business model that I found fascinating, and I think a lot of people didn't realize this.
Okay.
Stein Mart didn't actually run everything in the store.
Ah, yes. The leasing model. This is a masterclass in capital efficiency.
So you walk into Stein Mart, you buy a pair of shoes, you think you're buying them from Stein Mart. You pay at the Stein Mart register, but you're not really buying them from Stein Mart.
Correct. For decades, the shoe department was leased out to other retailers, most notably DSW Shoe Warehouse. And then later, in 2010, they started partnering with Perfumania for fragrances.
Why do that? Why give away the sales? If I'm a retailer, don't I want to capture every dollar that walks through the door?
Not if capturing that dollar costs you $2 in headaches. Think about shoes. Shoes are a nightmare to manage inventory for.
Because of all the sizes.
The SKU density is out of control. Think about a dress. You might have small, medium, large, XL, 4 SKUs per style. Now think about a shoe. You have sizes 5 through 11, you have half sizes, you have narrow, regular, and wide widths. For one style of pump, you might have 30 or 40 different boxes.
Wow.
So the amount of capital you need to tie up in inventory is enormous, and if you don't have the size 8.5 wide, you lose the sale.
And if you buy too many size 6s, you are stuck with dead stock that takes up huge amounts of space in the back room.
Which costs you money. It is incredibly capital intensive to stock a shoe department properly. You need millions of dollars just sitting in boxes.
So Stein basically said, hey, DSW, you guys are the experts at shoes. You take the floor space, you take the inventory risk, and we'll just take a cut of the sales or the rent.
Pretty much. It allowed Stein to offer a full department store experience. Look, we have shoes, we have perfume, without tying up their own cash in that risky inventory. It kept them agile. It allowed them to focus their money on apparel, which was their bread and butter.
That is fascinating. It's like a store within a store.
A brilliant strategy.
It creates a seamless illusion for the customer, but on the back end, it's a strategic partnership that reduces risk.
And it worked beautifully for a very long time, until the market started to shift.
Which leads us to part 3, the marketing and the connection. Because they had the locations, they had the boutique vibe, they had the smart leasing, but they also needed to speak to the customer. And in 2003, they did something that I think was actually kind of ahead of its time.
The Real Shopper campaign.
Yeah. This was with the Fryham and Barr Agency. Instead of hiring 19-year-old models who looked like they had never eaten a carb in their lives, they held casting calls. Nationwide casting calls. They were looking for their actual customers.
They wanted authenticity.
They picked 6 to 8 women per season. Real women. Teachers. Real estate agents. Grandmothers. And they put them in the ads. They put them in a sisterhood book online.
In 2003, this was novel. Today, we talk about authenticity and user-generated content and influencers all the time.
That's everywhere now.
We are used to seeing real people on TikTok or Instagram wearing the clothes. But back then, fashion marketing was very much about an unattainable ideal. It was the era of the supermodel.
Airbrush perfection.
Exactly. Stein looked at their demographic, which, let's be honest, skewed a bit older, 40s, 50s, 60s, and said, why don't we show women who actually look like our customers?
That seems so obvious in retrospect.
It does. But it was revolutionary then. They realized that their customer didn't want to look like a teenager. She wanted to look like a stylish, confident version of herself.
It solidified that connection. It wasn't about this is who you could be if you starved yourself. It was this is who you are and you look great.
It built loyalty. And loyalty was the currency Stein traded on. They didn't have the massive ad budgets of Macy's. They couldn't blanket the airwaves during the Super Bowl. They needed that I love my Stein feeling. They created a community where women felt seen.
But while they were nailing the Real Shopper vibe, there was another storm brewing on the horizon, the digital storm.
The internet, the great disruptor.
The notes say they began offering ship from store in October 2010 due to popular demand. 2010? That feels, I don't know, is that late?
It's acceptable, but perhaps a bit reactive rather than proactive. By 2010, Amazon is already a juggernaut.
Right.
Zappos has already revolutionized how people buy shoes online with free shipping and returns. Ship from store is a good move logistically. It means using your physical stores as warehouses to fulfill online orders, but it shows they were trying to bridge a gap.
They were playing catch-up.
They were a brick-and-mortar culture trying to adapt to a digital world, and that's a very hard transition to make.
And this brings us to part 4, the fall. Because for a long time it seemed like Stein was defying gravity. Even as malls started to decline in the late 2000s, Stein held on.
They were resilient. In 2013, they were still a profitable company. They reported a profit of $25.6 million. They had 260 stores in 29 states. That is a healthy, functioning company.
On paper, yes. But profit is a lagging indicator sometimes. The retail landscape was shifting under their feet faster than they could pivot.
The retail apocalypse, as the media dubbed it, was gaining momentum. And the department store model itself was under attack.
From all sides.
All sides. You had the rise of fast fashion like H&M and Zara eating up the younger demographic with incredibly cheap, trendy clothes. You had the rise of off-price giants like TJ Maxx and Marshalls growing aggressively and, frankly, executing the treasure hunt model very well.
And then the big one.
And then you had Amazon eating everything else. Stein was getting squeezed from all sides.
And we start to see the cracks in 2017. The stock price is trending down. And what do? They start cutting. This is the part of the story that always hurts to read.
It's the classic, painful playbook of a distressed retailer.
Walk us through it. What were the cuts?
October 2017, they cut 10% of the corporate staff. They trim inventory by 15%. They slash capital expenses by $22 million. They suspend stock dividends.
Okay, help me understand this from a business perspective. If you're losing money, shouldn't you cut costs? Isn't that the responsible thing to do?
You should cut waste, absolutely. But if you cut capacity, you enter a death spiral. Think about the service profit chain. If you cut corporate staff, there are fewer people to manage strategy, buying, and marketing. You lose the brains of the operation.
So you lose your vision. And if you trim inventory...
If you trim inventory by 15%, that real shopper walks in and looks at the racks. Maybe she used to find 10 things she liked. Now she finds 2. Maybe she can't find her size. The store feels sparse. It feels less abundant.
The treasure hunt isn't as exciting.
It's not. So she leaves empty-handed. And she might not come back. And if you slash capital expenses, the stores stop getting updated. The carpet gets worn. The lighting gets dim. The bathrooms don't get renovated. The store starts to look tired.
It smells like decline.
That's it, exactly. It smells like decline.
So the customer experience degrades, which leads to lower sales, which forces you to cut more.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You are cutting the muscle along with the fat. You are saving money in the short term by destroying the long-term viability of the brand.
And by January 2018, they make the announcement that no employee wants to hear. They're exploring strategic alternatives.
Which is corporate speak for, we are drowning, please someone buy us.
Oh,
Help us. They were looking for a buyer because they realized they couldn't survive as a standalone public company anymore. The public markets are ruthless. They demand growth every quarter. Stein Mart needed time to restructure, and you don't get time on the stock market.
And they almost found a lifeline in February 2020. The timing here is just heartbreaking.
It is the definition of bad luck. If you believe in fate, this is a cruel twist.
February 2020, they enter a deal to go private. A private equity group is going to buy them out, take them off the stock market. This looks like the path to survival, a way to fix the issues away from the glare of quarterly earnings calls.
It was a valid strategy. Go private, restructure, slim down, fix the inventory, and eventually relaunch. It could have worked.
And then, March 2020, the world stops.
The Black Swan event to end all Black Swan events. COVID-19.
The deal to go private.
Dead. The buyers walked away, the stores, forced to close temporarily due to lockdowns. And for a retailer that was already on the edge, struggling with liquidity.
It was the final blow.
It was a final blow. In retail, cash flow is oxygen. You have rent due on 280 stores. You have vendors who need to be paid for the spring inventory that is currently sitting in dark stores gathering dust. If you have zero revenue coming in, you suffocate very quickly. They didn't have the cash reserves to weather a multi-month shutdown.
So in August 2020, they file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. But it wasn't a, we're going to restructure bankruptcy like airlines do. It was a liquidation.
That's the key difference. They announced the closing of Al 279 stores.
Imagine that. 112 years of history gone.
Yeah.
From a steamboat in 1905 to everything must go signs in 2020.
And 11,000 employees out of work.
Just
gone. It was a massive shock to the industry and the consumers. I remember driving past one of the locations and seeing the signs. It felt like the end of an era. The specific niche they filled, that upscale discount experience, just evaporated. There was nowhere else quite like it to go.
But, as we teased at the beginning, in the world of modern business, dead is a relative term.
Welcome to part 5. Welcome to the era of the zombie brand.
So, late 2020, the carcass of Stein Mart is being picked over in bankruptcy court.
Yeah.
And a company called Rivy Retail E-Commerce Ventures swoops in. Who are these guys?
RV is an interesting player in the modern retail landscape. Their business model is essentially find a bankrupt brand with high name recognition, Radio Shack, Pier 1 models, and buy the intellectual property.
The IP, not the stores, not the inventory.
Right. They buy the logo, the customer email list, the domain name, the trademark. They buy the soul of the brand, but not the body.
So they don't buy the stores, they don't hire the employees, they don't take on the leases.
No, none of the expensive, messy, real-world stuff. They launch it as an online-only store. It's like a ghost kitchen, but for retail.
A ghost kitchen for retail. That's a perfect analogy.
You go to steinmart.com, and it looks like Stein Mart. The logo is there, the colors are there, but there are no stores. It's just a website shipping goods from a warehouse somewhere, or even drop shipping them directly from manufacturers.
They're banking on the nostalgia. They hope you click because you trust the name Stein Mart, even if the company behind it is totally different.
Exactly. They are harvesting the brand equity that Sam and Jake and Jay Stein built over a century. They are betting that the name still has value.
But even the zombies have trouble walking, because simply slapping a famous logo on a website isn't a guaranteed money printer.
It turns out the Steinmart experience was about more than just the logo. It was about the store, the treasure hunt, trying things on, touching the fabric, walking through the boutique.
All the stuff that doesn't translate online.
Right. When you take that away and just make it a website, you are competing with Amazon and Shin and everyone else, and you don't have the competitive advantage of the physical location anymore.
And apparently it didn't work out so well. March 2, 2023. RV itself announces it is mulling bankruptcy. The savior company was drowning. They hired restructuring lawyers. It seemed like the Steinmart name was cursed. It was going to die a second death.
Unbelievable.
The attempt to digitize the nostalgia had failed.
But here's where it gets really interesting. And this is the breaking news part of our deep dive.
The Resurrection, Part 2.
Our source text has a very simple but startling sentence. Steinmart returned in 2026.
We are recording this in February 2026, and yes, the brand is back.
Now, the source is sparse on the exact details of the corporate structure of this 2026 return, whether it's RV restructuring or a new owner entirely. But the fact remains, the brand is active, it survived the 2020 liquidation, it survived the 2023 REV collapse, and it is here.
This is what fascinates me. Why? Why won't this brand stay dead? There are plenty of department stores that went bust and stayed bust. Bon-Ton, Mervyn's, Gottschalk's. Why Steinmart?
It has to be the customers, right? Those real shoppers. It absolutely is. There is a stickiness to the Steinmart brand that is incredibly rare. Think about the demographic. These are shoppers who perhaps aren't as fickle as the Gen Z trend chasers.
They're loyal.
They found a home at Steinmart. They trusted the curation. Even after the stores closed, that search volume people typing Steinmart into Google must have remained high enough to convince investors that there was still gold in that mine.
It's the resilience of the name. It's 118 years of brand equity. You can't build that overnight. You can build a cool Shopify store, but you can't build 100 years of trust.
And that is the lesson here. In a digital world, trust is the scarcest resource. If you have a name that people trust, even if you went bankrupt, that name is an asset.
It's still worth something.
It's why we see Toys R Us popping up inside Macy's. It's why Steinmart is back online in 2026. The idea of Steinmart curated, discount, upscale was strong enough to survive the failure of the execution.
That's a powerful distinction. The execution failed, the stores were too expensive, the inventory was mismanaged, but the idea didn't fail. The customer still wants that product.
Precisely. The demand didn't disappear, the supply chain did. Now the supply chain is trying to reconnect.
So what does this all mean? If we zoom out, if I'm listening to this and I'm not a retail analyst, why should I care about Steinmart?
Because Steinmart is a microcosm of American history. Look at the timeline. It tells the story of the 20th and 21st centuries.
Walk us through that.
Step 1, immigrant roots. The American dream. 1908, a man gets off a boat and builds something from nothing.
Check.
Step 2, the suburban explosion. The mall era, 1980s and 90s. The democratization of luxury. Everyone gets to look rich.
Okay.
Step 3, the private equity corporate struggle, the death spiral of the 2010s, the financialization of everything.
Right.
Step 4, the online shift in zombie phase, 2020s, the disruption of the internet. And Step 5, the resurrection, the realization that legacy matters.
It really tracks perfectly with the economic life of the country.
It does, and it proves that adaptation is messy. It's not a straight line. Steinmart failed to adapt to the internet quickly enough, and they paid the ultimate price liquidation. But they are getting a second chance because the foundation was strong.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with a question for you, the listener, and it's something to think about the next time you're shopping online.
It's the question of authenticity.
Steinmart returned in 2026, but the company that owned it was on the ropes in 2023. So when you see these dead brands popping up on your Instagram feed or in your search results, whether it's Steinmart or Radio Shack or whoever, ask yourself, what are you actually buying?
Are you buying the heritage? Are you buying the curation and the soul that Sam and Jake and Jay Stein built? Or are you just buying a logo that's been pasted onto a generic e-commerce experience?
Is it a resurrection? Or is it just a ghost wearing the old uniform?
That is the question for the modern consumer. Can a digital brand have a soul? Steinmart is trying to prove that it can. They are trying to prove that the real shopper is still there.
Steinmart won't stay down. And honestly, part of me is rooting for them. 118 years is a long time to just disappear.
It certainly is. It's a testament to the power of a good idea.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. It's been a wild ride from the Mississippi Delta to the digital age.
Always a pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next one. Keep looking beneath the surface.